And if your greatest gift was also what will destroy you, Carl Jung discovered something that few dare to discuss and that never made the headlines. It wasn't about mental illness nor about mystical delusions. It was about people who see too much, people who see what others ignore or pretend not to notice. Jung called this differentiated perception, people who detect lies at first smile, who enters an environment and feels the unspoken tensions, who perceives the pain behind the joke, the anger camouflaged in silence, and the most hidden traits of the human soul. They don't have superpowers, they have a look that goes too deep. But Jung warned, this kind of vision has a price. These people end up isolated, exhausted, misunderstood. Not because they are unstable, but because seeing everything takes a toll that almost no one understands. They don't fit, and worse, they begin to doubt themselves. In this video, you'll find out why Jung considered this the most dangerous discovery of his entire career and what happens to those who see what the world doesn't want to see. The gift that isolates you. Imagine noticing what no one else seems to notice. You walk into a place and feel the energy in the air before anyone even says anything. A tightness in the chest, a nameless nuisance, a tension that hovers even when everyone is smiling. It is as if his gaze has gone beyond the surface. As if you have an invisible radar for what's wrong. This seems like a gift, and it really is, but it is also a burden. Because when you start to see what others don't see, something changes in you. You become different. And the world is not always ready for this. Jung called this differentiated perception a rare ability which is born in some people naturally. They didn't ask for it. They didn't seek that. They simply are like that. They perceive minimal gestures, hidden tones of voice, discomforts that no one expresses. They detect contradictions in what has been said. They feel when a word has been used as a shield. It's as if everything screams, even in silence. But the problem is that this view is not shared. When you comment on what you noticed, people find it strange, deny, they deflect. They say it's exaggeration, paranoia, drama, and little by little you learn to shut up. Because being the only one who sees, it is also being the only one who bothers you. This perception puts you in another frequency. While everyone is entertained by the way things look, you feel what's behind, and that separates you, not by choice, but by nature. You start to pull away, not because he wants to be lonely, but because he can no longer ignore what he sees. And living pretending not to notice hurts. Over time, this isolation deepens. You begin to doubt yourself, thinking that maybe I'm seeing too much, feeling too much, misinterpreting. But deep down, something you know. It's not an exaggeration. It's sensitivity. A sensitivity that others have lost or never had. Jung said that awakening is always a solitary process. Because when you start seeing the truth of relationships, of feelings, of silences, you also start to see the illusions that sustain the world. And that scares us. The gift of seeing what no one sees pushes you away. But it also reveals you. Because in this isolation, you begin to really know yourself. You begin to realize that this view is not a mistake. It is a key that opens internal doors, that brings you closer to a truth that does not depend on anyone's approval. Yes, it's lonely, but it's real. And sometimes the real needs solitude to flourish when silence speaks loudly. Sometimes what weighs most is not what was said, but what was left in the air. A look that lasted half a second longer. A breath caught in the middle of a sentence. An all right that came too dry. Those who see beyond words know silence speaks, and he speaks loudly. Jung said that the unconscious manifests itself in subtle details, and those who have keen perception capture these details as if they were screams. The body speaks, the soul escapes. Discomfort manifests itself in ways that only the attentive perceive, but what to do with it? You're having dinner with friends, everyone laughing, light weather, but you feel a knot in the environment, a cutting energy between two people. Something is wrong. Nobody comments. But you know, he knows that there is resentment. He knows that an avoided look says more than 1,000 words exchanged. And this knowledge does not leave you alone. The world is built with masks, with conventions, with ready-made phrases and social smiles. But those who hear the silence behind these phrases live in a parallel universe, a universe where everything has a double meaning, where every speech carries a subtext, where nothing is as simple as it seems. This wears you out, because your mind never rests. It is always decoding what is hidden, always trying to understand what is being said between the lines. And worse, many times you get it right, and that scares you. Most people are too busy to pay attention to the unsaid. They live in automatic mode. They believe what is said. They do not question the tone, the look, the delay in the response. But you can't. You notice, you feel it, and this becomes a burden. Sometimes you wish you didn't notice, to laugh along without thinking, to believe without analyzing. But it is impossible. Your brain is programmed to see patterns, to notice contrasts, to read the hidden language of the psyche. And what happens when you try to warn someone? When you say, there's something weird there, or I think this person isn't being sincere, you are seen as negative, critical, suspicious. People want to maintain the illusion. They want to remain comfortable on the surface, and its perception threatens this. Therefore, you learn to save, listening to the silence and silence as well, to understand that what you perceive cannot always be said, because the world is not ready for truth disguised as silence. But ironically, it is this silence that brings you closer to the human essence. Because in the unsaid lives the real, which is pure, what is raw. And by becoming intimate with that silence, you become intimate with yourself. It's not always easy, but it is true. The weight of seeing too much. Seeing too much may seem like an advantage, but in practice it's like carrying invisible baggage all the time. Every environment, every conversation, every look, everything comes to you with more information than necessary. And this emotional overload has no off button. While others simply hang out, you're absorbing. While others rest in a quiet room, you feel the emotions contained in the air. A tightness, a tension, a discomfort that no one mentions, but that you perceive clearly. It's like walking with the internal volume always at maximum. Jung understood this phenomenon. For him, the human psyche is made up of layers, and most people live only on the surface, but some manage to penetrate deeper. They feel the collective unconscious, absorb what is behind the scenes of the mind, both their own and that of others. That's it. Tired. Exhaustion is not physical. It is a weariness of the soul. As if each day was an emotional marathon, even without having done anything special. And the worst, you don't know how to explain. How can you say that the environment wears you out if everyone there seems happy? How do you justify that you are overwhelmed by something that no one else has noticed? You start to feel that there is something wrong with you, but there is not. What there is an excess of perception, an excess of depth. You're feeling things that others don't feel, not because they don't exist, but because they've learned to ignore them. You don't. This affects sleep, concentration, relationships, because your brain never shuts down. He is always interpreting, analyzing, feeling, connecting invisible dots. And the modern world, with its haste and superficiality, was not made for people like you. Many try to adapt. They force themselves to be lighter. They try to turn off this internal radar, ignore what they feel. But this only gets worse, because repressing perception is like trying to silence an internal scream. A part of you begins to get sick. The truth is that this weight exists, and it needs to be recognized. Seeing too much has a cost, and it's not a small one, but it is not in vain either. Because all this sensitivity has a purpose. It points out paths, it reveals truths, it expands your consciousness. So instead of fighting what you see, maybe the way is to learn to deal with it, create breaks, set boundaries, find spaces where you can breathe without feeling so much. And most importantly, recognize that you're not weak, it's deep. And depth, although heavy, is rare, and valuable masks you can't ignore. We live in a world full of masks. Every day, everywhere, people wear social expressions to protect themselves. Obligatory smiles, rehearsed phrases, automatic kindnesses. And it works for most, but not for those who see what is behind. To you, these masks are transparent. You notice when the compliment is forced, when the everything is fine hides, a choked cry, when someone's excitement is just armor to hide fear. You see, always see, and that can be suffocating because you can no longer relate lightly. Superficiality is annoying. Shallow conversations exhaust you. It's like living in a theater where you're the only one who knows you're watching a play. And worse, he cannot go out or warn others. Jung believed that we all wear masks. He called them persona. They are necessary to a certain extent. They are like social clothes of the soul. But when the mask becomes a prison, when the inner truth is buried, conflict arises. And those who have a deep look feel this conflict in the air. You start noticing contradictions in people, and that can be painful because it's often people you love. You see the injured child behind the rigid adult. He sees the insecurity hidden behind arrogance. He sees the lack in the middle of the exaggerated laughter. But the hardest thing is not to see. It's not being able to unsee. You try to pretend you didn't notice. Try to ignore it. But he can't. It is like a truth that pulsates before you. And the more you shut up, the more it eats away at you inside. Because you are not living real relationships. He's living in the midst of characters. This perception also makes you a target. People who wear masks feel threatened by those who see through them. They are bothered. They react with sarcasm, with distance, with disguised criticism, because their presence forces them to face what they hide. And few are ready for it. That's why you feel disconnected, not for lack of love, but for excess of clarity. You want to really connect. He wants conversations with soul, presence without performance, bonds without filters. But this has become rare, and in this scenario you have two options: either adapt to the game, also wearing your mask, or learn to live with your truth, even if it scares others, even if she pushes him away. Jung said that the process of individuation, the path to becoming who you are, requires the courage to take off your own mask and accept the truth within. And those who do this inevitably begin to see the masks of others as well. You see, and this, although difficult, is the beginning of freedom, the solitude of the sensitive. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Those who see beyond feel differently, and those who feel differently often live in an internal world that others do not reach. A world where everything is more intense, deeper, more real, but also more solitary. Carl Jung understood this pain well. For him, high sensitivity is like an antenna that picks up signals that no one else notices. And this connection to the invisible creates a disconnect from the ordinary world. Because when everything in you is more sensitive, more reflective, more observant, relationships begin to change. You try to share your perceptions, but people think you're too complicated. You express an intuition, and they say you're exaggerating. Gradually you withdraw, not out of pride, but out of protection. Because being misunderstood hurts. Then you start living in your silence, a silence that is not empty. It is too full of ideas, perceptions, unspoken feelings, and even though you want closeness, you feel like no one really sees you. No one sees the way you do, and this creates a distance that is difficult to explain. The loneliness of the sensitive is not only physical, it is existential. You may be in the middle of a party and feel like you're on another plane, because what for others is lightness, for you is noise. As they talk about the weather, you notice the tiredness in someone's eyes. As they laugh at a joke, you feel the discomfort hidden in that smile. You are present, but he is alone. And this loneliness does not come from pride. It comes from a level of perception that others don't share. You feel like you need to shrink yourself to fit into the rooms. You need to filter your words, your ideas, even your energy. Because being whole, away, this generates a constant longing for something that you may never have experienced. Being completely understood, to be welcomed in its depth without having to explain yourself. To find a space where your sensitivity is not a problem, but a bridge. But this space is rare, and until it arrives, loneliness becomes a silent companion. Jung talked about the process of individuation, the path that leads each human being to become who he really is. And he said that this process by nature is solitary, because it requires looking inside. And in this internal look, we often realize how much the external world disconnects us. Still, this loneliness is not the end. It is a portal, a space for polishing. A time where you really know yourself, where you learn to love your own company, where his sensitivity, previously seen as a burden, begins to be recognized as a strength. The loneliness of the sensitive exists, but it can also be a sanctuary, a place where you stop molding yourself for others and begins to mold itself. To itself, the body also screams. Sometimes the mind holds on, but the body, no. People who see too much tend to carry a lot inside. Unspoken emotions, repressed intuitions, truths swallowed so as not to generate conflict. And all this, when it does not find a way out through the word, finds space in the body. Jung believed that the body is the physical expression of the psyche. Everything that is not processed in the mind ends up manifesting itself in the physical. And those who have keen perception, extreme sensitivity, usually live with an accumulated tension that they do not know where it comes from. It's chest pain for no medical reason. It's fatigue that doesn't go away. It's migraine after a difficult conversation. It's insomnia after a heavy environment. It's the stomach closing when someone lies. It is the neck stiffened by trying to maintain posture in the midst of hypocrisy. Have you ever felt that? It is as if the body is the only one that does not lie. It reacts before the rational mind understands what is happening, and often you only realize something is wrong because the body screams. The problem is that most people ignore these signs. He takes medicine, sleeps badly, drinks more coffee, pretends that everything is fine. But for those who see too much, this does not work, because the body is so connected to perception that any attempt to silence the alert only makes the pain worse. And it's not freshness, it's biological, it's real. Your body is reacting to the world, to false environments, to empty words, to relationships, without truth, to the overload of feeling all the time. He can no longer bear to carry what the mind cannot let go. Many spend years trying to treat the symptoms without realizing that the cause is in the soul, in the excess of perception, in the absence of reception, in the constant need to filter the entire world before it can simply exist. Jung said that the unconscious speaks, and one of the ways he finds to communicate is through the body. Diseases that recur, symptoms that appear out of nowhere. Constant tension, chronic tiredness. All of this may be the way that your inner self has found to say, something is wrong. And you're ignoring it. That's why it's so important to listen to the body. Respect your limits. Create break spaces. Reduce time in toxic environments. Take care of sleep, food, of rhythm. Because the more sensitive you are, the more you need to protect your physical structure. It is not a question of weakness. It's about connection. Your body is the thermometer of your soul, and the more intense what you see and feel, the more it will need care. Not to silence what screams, but to give voice to what is still trapped inside. When the truth scares, there comes a time when you stop doubting others and begins to doubt himself. Seeing too much isn't just tiring, it's dangerous, because little by little you begin to notice things that no one confirms. Intuitions that prove to be true, but that no one admits. Sensations that hit the nail on the head and leave you confused. You start to wonder, am I the problem? This inner doubt is one of the cruelest parts of the path. Carl Jung was talking about the collective unconscious, a kind of invisible network that connects all human minds. And those who are more sensitive end up touching this network more often. But the external world, guided by logic and haste, does not recognize this kind of connection. Then you feel something, notice something, but no one else sees it. No one validates it anymore, and that makes you question your own sanity. Am I exaggerating? Is this something in my head? Am I too sensitive? No, you're not crazy. Nor weak, nor dramatic. You are only seeing what most people can't or don't want to see. The truth, when it is not shared, can become a burden, and that's when sensitivity starts to turn against you, not because it is bad, but because she is alone. You see the patterns repeating themselves in people. He sees sick relationships disguising themselves as love. He sees families destroying each other with sweet words. He sees fear camouflaging itself as authority. And every time you notice something like this, he feels that he should do something. But what do you do when no one wants to see what you're seeing? Often the answer is silence, and it is this silence that begins to eat away at you. Because seeing the truth and not being able to share it is like being trapped in a parallel reality. A reality where everything makes sense, but no one believes you. Jung said the truth does not liberate if it is not accompanied by understanding. And that's the key. When you understand that your perception is not a curse, but a rare ability, you begin to free yourself from doubt. Yes, the truth can be scary, especially when she shows that the world around her is sleeping, that many live under masks, that relationships are fragile, that the happiness that others show is often just appearance. But as scary as it may be, this truth can also be your cure. Because when you stop running away from what you feel and start trusting what you see, something changes. You get stronger. You anchor yourself. You find within yourself a compass that no one can take away, and that's when fear starts to turn into clarity. The truth only scares when you are alone in front of it. When you accept your own vision, even if the whole world denies it, it ceases to be a threat and becomes an ally. And it is at this point that the transformation begins. Transform gift into strength. You've spent your life feeling too much, seeing too much, carrying silent truths, invisible tensions, intuitions without explanation. And for a long time, he thought this was a problem, a failure, something that needed to be hidden or controlled. But what if all of this is actually a gift? Carl Jung believed that the most important process of the human being was individuation, becoming who one truly is. And for those who have the gift of deep insight, this path requires courage. Because the world will push you into the shallows. It will try to make you fit in, that thinks like the others, that he ignores what he sees, but you weren't made to ignore. You were made to see. And now that you understand the weight of what you carry, it's time to do something with it, to transform pain into power, to transform the gift that once isolated you into a bridge to your true mission. How? It starts with acceptance. Accept that you are different. Not better, not worse, just different, and that this difference is his tool in the world. Then comes care. Protect your energy, take care of your body, establish clear boundaries with those who try to suck you up or invalidate you. Then comes the expression, everything you see and feel needs a channel. It can be art, writing, music, silence. It can be care for others, psychology, spirituality. The important thing is not to repress, because what gets stuck gets sick, what flows heals, and finally comes courage. The courage to be who you are, to speak what you feel, even when it seems strange, to trust your intuitions, even without evidence, to walk steadily, even when no one understands where you're going. This courage transforms. Transform the gaze that isolated you into a gaze that guides. It transforms the sensitivity that hurt into a sensitivity that heals. It transforms loneliness into wisdom and perception into power. You didn't come into the world to live anesthetized. You have come to awaken and awaken others. Maybe that's why your soul sees what others don't see. Maybe that's why you have been chosen. Not everyone is meant to live in the dark. Some were born with eyes that go through appearance, and they see the soul. But this look, so rare and powerful, can be lonely. It can hurt, it can even destroy. If you don't know what to do with it, but now you know, this gift is not a curse. He is called to awaken, to transform, to see not only others, but oneself. And even though the world says you're sorry, he sees too much. Think too much. The truth is, you just lived too long. That's it. It's exactly what makes you extraordinary.